This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Maria Tafidis. Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens. Book the 4th, Chapter 12. The Passing Shadow. The winds and tides rose and fell a certain number of times. The earth moved round the sun a certain number of times. The ship upon the ocean made her voyage safely, and brought the baby Bella home. Then who so blessed and happy as Mrs. John Rokesmith, saving and excepting Mr. John Rokesmith? "Would you not like to be rich now, my darling?" "How can you ask me such a question, John dear? Am I not rich?" These were among the first words spoken near the baby Bella as she lay asleep. She soon proved to be a baby of wonderful intelligence, evincing the strongest objection to her grandmother's society, and being invariably seized with a painful acidity of the stomach when that dignified lady honoured her with any attention. It was charming to see Bella contemplating this baby, and finding out her own dimples in that tiny reflection, as if she were looking in the glass without personal vanity. Her cherubic father justly remarked to her husband that the baby seemed to make her younger than before, reminding him of the days when she had a pet doll, and she used to talk to it as she carried it about. The world might have been challenged to produce another baby who had such a store of pleasant nonsense said and sung to it, as Bella said and sung to this baby, or who was dressed and undressed as often in 24 hours as Bella dressed and undressed this baby, or who was held behind doors and poked out to stop its father's way when he came home as this baby was, or in a word, who did half the number of baby things, through the lively invention of a gay and proud young mother, that this inexhaustible baby did. The inexhaustible baby was 2 or 3 months old when Bella began to notice a cloud upon her husband's brow. Watching it, she saw gathering and deepening anxiety there which caused her great disquiet. More than once she woke him muttering in his sleep, and though he muttered nothing worse than her own name, it was plain to her that his restlessness originated in some load of care. Therefore Bella at length put in her claim to divide this load, and hear her half of it. "You know, John dear," she said, cheerily reverting to the former conversation, "that I hope I may safely be trusted in great things, and it surely cannot be a little thing that causes you so much uneasiness. It's very considerate of you to try to hide from me that you are uncomfortable about something, but it's quite impossible to be done, John love." "I admit that I am rather uneasy, my own." "Then please to tell me what about, sir." But no, he evaded that. "Never mind," thought Bella resolutely. "John requires me to put perfect faith in him, and he shall not be disappointed." She went up to London one day to meet him, in order that he might make some purchases. She found him waiting for her at her journey's end, and they walked away together through the streets. He was in gay spirits, though still harping on that notion of their being rich, and he said now let them make me believe that yonder fine carriage of theirs, and that it was waiting to take them home to a fine house if they had. What would Bella in that case best like to find in the house? Well, Bella didn't know. Already having everything she wanted, she couldn't say. But by degrees she was led on to confess that she would like to have for the inexhaustible baby such a nursery as never was seen. It was to be a very rainbow for colours, as she was quite sure baby noticed colours, and the staircase was to be adorned with most exquisite flowers. As she was absolutely certain baby noticed flowers, and there was to be an aviary somewhere of the loveliest little birds, as there was not the smallest doubt in the world that baby noticed birds. Was there nothing else? No, John dear. The predilections of the inexhaustible baby being provided for, Bella could think of nothing else. They were chatting on in this way, and Joan had suggested, "No jewels for your own wear, for instance?" And Bella had replied, laughing, "Oh, if you came to that, yes, there might be a beautiful ivory case of jewels on her dressing-table." When these pictures were in a moment darkened and blotted out, they turned a corner and met Mr. Lightwood. He stopped, as if he were petrified, at the sight of Bella's husband, who in the same moment had changed colour. "Mr. Lightwood and I have met before," he said. "Met before, Joe?" Bella repeated in a tone of wonder. "Mr. Lightwood told me he had never seen you." "I did not then know that I had," said Lightwood, discomposed on her account. "I believed that I had only heard of Mr. Rokesmith," with an emphasis on the name. "When Mr. Lightwood saw me, my love," observed her husband, not avoiding his eye, but looking at him, "my name was Julius Handford." Julius Handford! The name that Bella had so often seen in old newspapers when she was an inmate of Mr. Boffin's house. Julius Handford, who had been publicly entreated to appear, and for intelligence of whom a reward had been publicly offered. "I would have avoided mentioning it in your presence," said Lightwood to Bella delicately, "but since you had mentioned it himself, I must confirm his strange admission. I saw him as Mr. Julius Handford, and I afterwards, unquestionably to his knowledge, took great pains to trace him out." "Quite true, but it was not my object, or my interest," said Rokesmith quietly, "to be traced out." Bella looked from the one to the other in amazement. "Mr. Lightwood," pursued her husband, "as chance has brought us face to face at last, which is not to be wondered at, for the wonder is that in spite of all my pains, to the contrary, chance has not confronted us together sooner. I have only to remind you that you have been at my house, and to add that I have not changed my residence." "Sir," returned Lightwood, with a meaning glance toward Bella, "my position is a truly painful one. I hope that no complicity in a very dark transaction may attach to you, but you cannot fail to know that your own extraordinary conduct has laid you under suspicion." "I know it has," was all the reply. "My professional duty," said Lightwood, hesitating, with another glance towards Bella, "is greatly at variance with my personal inclination. But I doubt, Mr. Handford, or Mr. Rokesmith, whether I am justified in taking leave of you here, with your whole course unexplained." Bella caught her husband by the hand. "Don't be alarmed, my darling. Mr. Lightwood will find that he is quite justified in taking leave of me here. At all events," added Rokesmith, "he will find that I mean to take leave of him here." "I think, sir," said Lightwood, "you can scarcely deny that when I came to your house on the occasion to which you have referred, you avoided me of a set purpose." "Mr. Lightwood, I assure you I have no disposition to deny it, or intention to deny it. I should have continued to avoid you in pursuance of the same set purpose for a short time longer if we had not met now. I am going straight home, and shall remain at home tomorrow until noon. Hereafter I hope we may be better acquainted. Good day." Lightwood stood irresolute, but Bella's husband passed him in the steadiest manner, with Bella on his arm, and they went home without encountering any further remonstrance or molestation from anyone. When they had dined and were alone, John Rokesmith said to his wife, who had preserved her cheerfulness, "And you don't ask me, my dear, why I bore that name?" "No, John, love. I should dearly like to know, of course," which her anxious face confirmed. "But I'll wait until you can tell me of your own free will. You asked me if I could have perfect faith in you, and I said yes, and I meant it." It did not escape Bella's notice that he began to look triumphant. She wanted no strengthening in her firmness, but if she had had need of any, she would have derived it from his kindling face. "You cannot have been prepared, my dearest, for such a discovery as that this mysterious Mr. Handford was identical with your husband?" "No, John dear, of course not, but you told me to prepare to be tried, and I prepared myself." He drew her to nestle closer to him, and told her it would soon be over, and the truth would soon appear. "And now," he went on, "lay stress, my dear, on these words that I am going to add. I stand in no kind of peril, and I can by possibility be hurt at no one's hand. You are quite sure of that, John dear? Not a hair of my head. Moreover, I have done no wrong, and have injured no man. Shall I swear it? No, John, cried Bella, laying her hand upon his lips with a proud look. Never to me. But circumstances went on. I can and I will disperse them in a moment. Have surrounded me with one of the strangest suspicions ever known. You heard Mr. Lightwood speak of a dark transaction? Yes, John. You are prepared to hear explicitly what he meant? Yes, John. My life. He meant the murder of John Harmon, your allotted husband. With a fast, palpitating heart, Bella grasped him by the arm. You cannot be suspected, John. Dear lover can be, for I am. There was silence between them, as she sat looking in his face, with the colour quite gone from her own face and lips. How dare they? She cried at length in a burst of generous indignation. My beloved husband, how dare they? He caught her in his arms as she opened hers and held her to his heart. Even knowing this, you can trust me, Bella? I can trust you, John dear, with all my soul. If I could not trust you, I should fall dead at your feet. The kindling triumph in his face was bright indeed, as he looked up and rapturously exclaimed, what had he done to deserve the blessing of this dear, confiding creature's heart? Again she put her hand upon his lips, saying, hush, and then told him, in her own little natural pathetic way, that if all the world were against him, she would be for him, that if all the world repudiated him, she would believe him, that if he were infamous in other eyes, he would be honoured in hers, and that under the worst unmerited suspicion, she could devote her life to consoling him, and imparting her own faith in him to the little child. The twilight calm of happiness then succeeding to the raging noon, they remained at peace until a strange voice in the room startled them both. The room being by that time dark, the voice said, Don't let the lady be alarmed by my striking a light. And immediately a match rattled and glimmered in her hand. The hand of the match and the voice were then seen by John Rocksmith to belong to Mr. Inspector, once meditatively active in his chronicle. I take the liberty, said Mr. Inspector in a business-like manner, to bring myself to the recollection of Mr. Julius Handford, who gave me his name and address down at our place a considerable time ago. Would the lady object to my lighting the pair of candles on the chimney-piece to throw further light upon the subject? No? Thank you, ma'am. Now we look cheerful. Mr. Inspector, in a dark blue button-up frock-coat and pantaloons, presented a serviceable half-pay roll-arms kind of appearance, as he applied his pocket-handkerchief to his nose and bowed to the lady. You favoured me, Mr. Handford, said Mr. Inspector, by writing down your name and address, and I produced the piece of paper on which you wrote it, comparing the same with the writing of the fly-leaf of this book on the table, and a sweet twit of your images, I find the writing of the entry, Mrs. Joan Rocksmith, from her husband on her birthday, and very gratifying to the feeling such memorials are, to correspond exactly. Can I have a word with you? Certainly, here, if you please, was the reply. Why, retorted Mr. Inspector, again using his pocket-handkerchief, there is nothing for the lady to be at all alarmed at. Still, ladies are apt to take alarm at matters of business, being of that fragile sex that they are not accustomed to them when of strictly domestic character. And I don't generally make it a rule to propose retirement from the presence of ladies before entering upon business subjects. Or perhaps, Mr. Inspector hinted that the lady was to step upstairs and take a look at baby now. Mrs. Rocksmith, her husband was beginning when Mr. Inspector, regarding the words of his introduction, said, Happy I am sure to have the honour, and bowed with gallantry. Mrs. Rocksmith, resumed her husband, is satisfied that she can have no reason for being alarmed whatever the business is. Really? Is that so? Said Mr. Inspector. But it's a sex to live and learn from, and there is nothing a lady can't accomplish when she once fully gives her mind to it. It is the case with my own wife. Well, ma'am, this good gentleman of yours has given rise to a rather large amount of trouble, which might have been avoided if he had come forward and explained himself. Well, you see, he didn't come forward and explain himself. Consequently, now that we meet, him and me, you'll say, and say right, there is nothing to be alarmed at in my proposing to him to come forward, or putting the same meaning in another form, to come along with me and explain himself. When Mr. Inspector puts it in that other form, to come along with me, there was a relishing roll in his voice, and his eye beamed with an official lustre. Do you propose to take me into custody? inquired John Rocksmith very coolly. Why argue? Returned Mr. Inspector in a comfortable sort of remonstrance. Is it enough that I propose that you shall come along with me? For what reason? Lord bless my soul and body, returned Mr. Inspector, I wonder at in a man of your education. Why argue? What do you charge against me? "I wonder at you before ladies, Mr. Inspector," shaking his head reproachfully. "I wonder, brought up as you have been, you haven't a more delicate mind. I charge you, then, with being some way concerned in the Hammond murder. I don't say whether before, or in, or after the fact. I don't say whether having some knowledge, or if that doesn't come out. You don't surprise me. I foresaw your visit this afternoon." "Don't," said Mr. Inspector. Why argue? It's my duty to inform you that whatever you say will be used against you." "I don't think it will." "But I tell you it will," said Mr. Inspector. "Now, having received a caution, do you still say that you foresaw my visit this afternoon?" "Yes, and I will say something more, if you will step with me into the next room." With a reassuring kiss on the lips of the frightened Bella, her husband, whom Mr. Inspector obligingly offered his arm, took up a candle and withdrew with that gentleman. They were a full half-hour in conference. When they returned, Mr. Inspector looked considerably astonished. "I have invited this worthy officer, my dear," said Joan, "to make a short excursion with me, in which he shall be your sharer. He will take something to eat and drink, I dare say, and your invitation while you are getting your bonnet on." Mr. Inspector declined eating, but assented to the proposal of a glass of brandy and water, and mixing this cold and pensively consuming it. He broke at intervals into such soliloquies as that he never did know such a move, that he never had been so gravelled, and that what a game was this to try the sort of stuff a man's opinion of himself was made of. Concurrently with these comments, he more than once burst out a-laughing, with the half-enjoying and half-piqued air of a man who had given up a good conundrum, after much guessing, and been told the answer. Bella was so timid of him that she noted these things in a half-shrinking, half-perceptive way, and similarly noted that there was a great change in his manner with Joan, that coming along with him deportment was now lost in long musing looks at Joan and at herself, and sometimes in slow heavy rubs of his hand across his forehead, as if he were ironing the creases which his deep pondering made there. He had had some coughing and whistling satellites secretly gravitating towards him about the premises, but they were now dismissed, and he eyed Joan as if he had meant to do him a public service, but had unfortunately been anticipated. Whether Bella might have noted anything more, if she had been less afraid of him, she could not determine, but it was all inexplicable to her, and not the faintest flash of the real state of the case broke in upon her mind. Mr. Inspector's increased notice of herself and knowing way of raising his eyebrows when their eyes by any chance met, as if he put the question, "Don't you see?" augmented her timidity and consequently her perplexity. For all these reasons, when he and she and Joan, towards 9 o'clock of winter evening, went to London, and began driving from London Bridge among low-lying waterside wharves and docks and strange places, Bella was in the state of a dreamer, perfectly unable to account for her being there, perfectly unable to forecast what would happen next, or whither she was going, or why. Certain of nothing in the immediate present, but that she confided in Joan, and that Joan seemed somehow to be getting more triumphant. But what a certainty was that! They alighted at last at the corner of a court, where there was a building with a bright lamp and wicket gate. Its orderly appearance was very unlike that of the surrounding neighbourhood, and was explained by the inscription "Police Station." "We are not going here, Joan," said Bella, clinging to him. "Yes, my dear, but of our own accord. We shall come out again as easily, never fear." The whitewashed room was pure white as of old, the methodical bookkeeping was in the peaceful progress as of old, and some distant howler was banging against the cell door as of old. The sanctuary was not a permanent abiding place, but a kind of criminal pitfalls. The lower passions and vices were regularly ticked off in the books, warehoused in the cells, carted away as per accompanying invoice, and left a little mark upon it. Mr. Inspector placed 2 chairs for his visitors before the fire, and communed in a low voice with the brother of his order, also of a half-pay and well-armed aspect, who, judged only by his occupation at the moment, might have been a writing-master setting copies. Their conference done, Mr. Inspector returned to the fireplace, and having observed that he would step round to the fellowships and see how matters stood, went out. He soon came back again, saying, "Nothing could be better, for they are at supper with Miss Abby and the bar," and they all 3 went out together. Still, as in a dream, Bella found herself entering a snug, old-fashioned public house, and found herself smuggled into a little 3-cornered room nearly opposite the bar of that establishment. Mr. Inspector achieved the smuggling of herself and Joan into this queer room, called cosy in the inscription on the door, by entering the narrow passage first in order, and suddenly turning round upon them with extended arms, as if they had been 2 sheep. The room was lighted for the reception. "Now," said Mr. Inspector to Joan, turning the gas lower, "I'll mix with them in a casual way, and when I say identification, Perhaps you'll show yourself." Joan nodded, and Mr. Inspector went alone to the half-door of the bar. From the dim doorway of cosy, within which Bella and her husband stood, they could see a comfortable little party of 3 persons sitting at supper in the bar, and could hear everything that was said. The 3 persons were Miss Abby and 2 male guests, to whom collectively Mr. Inspector remarked that the weather was getting sharp for the time of year. "If it need be sharp to suit your wit, sir," said Miss Abby. "What have you got in hand now?" "Thank you for your compliment that much." Miss Abby was Mr. Inspector's rejoinder. "Who have you got in cosy?" asked Miss Abby. "Only a gentleman and his wife, miss." "And who are they, if one may ask you to their detriment your deep plans in the interests of the honest public?" said Miss Abby, proud of Mr. Inspector as an administrative genius. "They are strangers in this part of the town, Miss Abby. They are waiting till I shall want the gentleman to show himself somewhere for half a moment." "Why are they waiting?" said Miss Abby. "Couldn't you join us?" Mr. Inspector immediately slipped into the bar and sat down at the side of the half-door, with his back towards the passage, and directly facing the 2 guests. "I don't take my supper till later in the night," said he, "and therefore I won't disturb the compactness of the table. But I'll take a glass of Flip, if that's Flip in the jug in the fender." "That's Flip," replied Miss Abby, "and it's my making, and if even you can find out better, I shall be glad to know where." Filling him with hospitable hands a steaming tumbler, Miss Abby replaced the jug by the fire, the company not having yet arrived at the Flip stage of the supper, but being as yet skirmishing with strong ale. "Aha!" cried Mr. Inspector, "that's the smack! There is not a detective in the force, Miss Abby, that could find out better stuff than that." "I'm glad to hear you say so," rejoined Miss Abby. "You ought to know if anybody does." "Mr. Job Patterson," Mr. Inspector continued, "I drink your health. Mr. Jacob Kibble, I drink yours. Hope you have made a prosperous voyage home, gentlemen both." Mr. Kibble, a nonchalant broad man of few words and many mouthfuls, said more briefly than pointedly, raising his ale to his lips, "Same to you." Mr. Job Patterson, a semi-seafaring man of obliging demeanour, said, "Thank you, sir." "Lord bless my soul and body!" cried Mr. Inspector. "Talk of trades, Miss Abby, and the way they set their marks on men, a subject which nobody had approached. Who wouldn't know your brother to be a steward? There's a bright and ready twinkle in his eye, there's a neatness in his action, there's a smartness in his figure, there's an air of reliability about him in case he wanted a basin, which points out the steward. And Mr. Kibble is a passenger all over, while there's a mercantile cut upon him which would make you happy to give him credit for 500 pounds. Don't you see the salt sea shining on him too?" "You do, I dare say," returned Miss Abby, "but I don't. And as for stewarding, I think Stamford rather gave that up, and took his house in hand and his sister's retirement. The house will go to pieces if you don't. I wouldn't sell it for any money that could be told out to a person that I couldn't depend upon to be a law to the porters, as I have been." "There you're right, miss," said Mr. Inspector. "A better-kept house is not known to our men." "But I say, half so well-kept a house is not known to our men. Show the force 6 jolly fellowship porters, and the force to a constable will show you a piece of perfection, Mr. Kibble." The gentleman, with a very serious shake of his head, subscribed the article. "And talk of time slipping by you, as if it was an animal at rustic sports with its tail soaked," said Mr. Inspector, again a subject which nobody had approached. "Why, well you may. Well you may. How was it slipped by us since the time when Mr. Job Patterson here present, Mr. Jacob Kibble here present, as an officer of the force here present, first came together on a matter of identification?" Bella's husband stepped softly to the half-door of the bar, and stood there. "How has time slipped by us?" Mr. Inspector went on slowly, with his eyes narrowly observant of the 2 guests, "since we 3 very men at an inquest in this very house. Mr. Kibble taken ill, sir?" Mr. Kibble had staggered up, with his lower jaw dropped, catching Patterson by the shoulder and pointing to the half-door. He now cried out, "Patterson, look! Look there!" Patterson started up, started back, and exclaimed, "Haven't you finished with that?" Bella's husband stepped back to Bella, took her in his arms, for she was terrified by the unintelligible terror of the 2 men, and shut the door of the little room. A hurry of voices succeeded, in which Mr. Inspector's voice was busiest. It gradually slackened and sank, and Mr. Inspector reappeared. "Sharp's the word, sir," he said, looking in with a knowing wink. "We'll get your lady out at once." Immediately Bella and her husband were on the stairs, making their way back alone to the vehicle that had kept him waiting. All this was most extraordinary, and Bella could make nothing of it but that Joan was in the right. How in the right, and how suspected of being in the wrong, she could not divine. Some vague idea that he had never really assumed the name of Handford, that there was a remarkable likeness between him and that mysterious person, was her nearest approach to any definite explanation. But Joan was triumphant, That much was made apparent, and she could wait for the rest. When Joan came home to dinner next day, he said, sitting down on the sofa by Bella and baby Bella, "My dear, I have a piece of news to tell you. I have left the China house." As he seemed to like having left it, Bella took it for granted there was no misfortune in any case. "In a word, my love," said Joan, "the China house is broken up and abolished. There is no such thing any more." "Then are you already in another house, Joan?" "Yes, my darling, I'm in another way of business, and I am rather better off." The inexhaustible baby was instantly made to congratulate him, and to say, with the appropriate action on the part of a very limp arm and a speckled fist, "3 cheers, ladies and gentlemen, hooray!" "I'm afraid, my life," said Joan, "that you have become very much attached to this cottage." "Afraid I have, Joan? Of course I have. The reason why I said afraid, Joan, is because we must move." "Oh, Joan!" "Yes, my dear, we must move. We must have our headquarters in London now. In short, there's a dwelling-house, rent-free, attached to my new position, and we must occupy it." "That's a gain, Joan." "Yes, my dear, it's undoubtedly a gain." He gave her a very blithe look and a very sly look, which occasioned the inexhaustible baby to square at him with a speckled fist, and demand in a threatening manner what he meant. My love said it was a gain, and I said it was a gain, a very innocent remark, surely. "I won't," said the inexhaustible baby, "allow you to make game of my venerable ma," at each division administering a soft facer with one of the speckled fists. Joan, having stooped down to receive these punishing visitations, Bella asked him, would it be necessary to move soon? "Why, yes, indeed," said Joan. "He did propose that he should move very soon." "Taking the furniture with him, of course?" said Bella. "Why, no," said Joan. "The fact was that the house was, in a sort of a kind of way, furnished already." The inexhaustible baby, hearing this, resumed the offensive and said, "But there's no nursery for me, sir." "What do you mean, marble-hearted parent?" To which the marble-hearted parent rejoined that it was a sort of a kind of a nursery, and it might be made to do. "Made to do?" returned the inexhaustible, administering more punishment. "What do you take me for?" and was then turned over on his back in Bella's lap and smothered with kisses. "But really, Joan dear," said Bella, flushed in quite a lovely manner by these exercises, "will the new house, just as it stands, do for baby? That's a question." "I feel that to be the question," he returned, "and therefore I arranged that you should come with me and look at it tomorrow morning." Appointment made, accordingly, for Bella to go up with him tomorrow morning. Joan kissed, and Bella delighted. When they reached London in pursuance of the little plan, they took coach and drove westward. Not only drove westward, but drove into that particular westward division which Bella had seen last when she turned her face from Mr. Buffin's door. Not only drove into that particular division, but drove at last into that very street. Not only drove into that very street, but stopped at last at that very house. "Joan, dear!" cried Bella, looking out of window in a flutter, "do you see where we are?" "Yes, my love, the coachman's quite right." The house door was opened without any knocking or ringing, and Joan promptly helped her out. The servant who stood holding the door asked no question of Joan, neither did he go before them or follow them as they went straight upstairs. It was only husband's encircling arm, urging her on, that prevented Bella from stopping at the foot of the staircase. As they ascended, it was seen to be tastefully ornamented with most beautiful flowers. "Oh, Joan!" said Bella faintly, "what does that mean?" "Nothing, my darling, nothing. Let us go on." Going a little higher, they came to a charming aviary, in which a number of tropical birds, more gorgeous in colour than the flowers, were flying about, and among those birds were golden silverfish and mosses and water lilies and a fountain and all manner of wonders. "Oh, my dear Joan," said Bella, "what does this mean?" "Nothing, my darling, nothing. Let us go on." They went on until they came to a door. As John put out his head to open it, Bella caught his hand. "I don't know what it means, but it's too much for me. Hold me, Joan, love." John caught her up in his arm and lightly dashed into the room with her. Behold Mr. and Mrs. Buffin beaming. Behold Mrs. Buffin clapping her hands in an ecstasy, running to Bella with tears of joy pouring down her comely face, and folding her to her breast with the words, "My dear, dear, dearie girl, that Nadia and me so married and couldn't wish joy to, was so much to speak to. My dear, dear, dearie wife of John and mother of his little child. My loving, loving, bright, bright, pretty, pretty, welcome to your house and home, my dearie." End of chapter 12, book the 4th.